Well, it's Judgment Day for me. Oh God, now we're going to get to the root of the issue, no pun intended. Good morning, I hope everyone is doing well. Figured I'd do my second take of what was going to be posted yesterday here in Wyndham to hopefully get my point across a bit better. And I just want to say, if this doesn't get uploaded by late afternoon, it was nice knowing you guys. No, it'll probably be fun. But in all seriousness, I hope that everything goes smoothly, because otherwise you're going to miss out on me having quite a few strokes. And that, in my eyes, is just simply unacceptable. But no, anybody who's been paying attention to me yesterday will know that I put a post up regarding a Labour MP. I believe his name is Iqbal Mohammed, if I recall correctly. Yes, very English, I know. But he decided he wanted to go against the bill to basically ban first cousin marriage. Though ironically, I think this was already in place anyway, since it involves the law around incest. But I suppose anything that protects from this degeneracy is a good thing. Because a couple of points I brought up was that basically this inbreeding, by marrying first cousins and what have you, can potentially bring up issues like infertility, heart problems and the like. Well, it turns out it also has the tendency to increase mortality rates. It increases the risk of genetic disorders such as that of cystic fibrosis, and children generally have a higher mortality rate if they are inbreeding. It turns out I have arrived literally an hour and a half, near enough, well, an hour 20 minutes too early for the dentist, so I doubt I would want to go inside. They probably wouldn't be expecting me to see me this early. Anyway, it can bring up the genetic disorders, the infertility, increased mortality rates of children. There's reduced size potential in these kids if there's inbreeding. That's just to name a few things. But Iqbal Mohammed, being a man who is of the so-called religion of peace, as they keep on trying to brainwash into believing, of course he wants to keep this going, because after all, it runs in their blood. Mind you, I'm surprised their cousin isn't a goat, quite frankly. And I'm not talking about the acronym greatest of all time either. But what can we really expect from a death cult that is Islam? And speaking of Islam, the Muslim Council of Britain, which there shouldn't be any Muslim council period unless they're in their third world shitholes governing their own countries where Islam is the predominant religion. Well, they decided they were going to come out and attack GB News. They wanted to attack Patrick Christie's. They wanted to attack just the news station in general and basically call them racist, Islamophobic, inciting violence, etc., etc. None of which has any foundation. In fact, the foundation is about as strong as a fort made in paper mache. But then that's the thing with Islam. Islam is very sensitive. Islam doesn't like it when its little religion of degeneracy, murder and conquering gets criticised by anybody who has this now increasingly uncommon thing called common sense. What they have been trying to do over these last decade, well, last few years, decade, whatever you want to call it, is Islam has basically been doing everything it can to shut down debate. It has been doing everything it can to try and shut down any valid criticism of their third world shithole ideology that is Islam. Because unlike other religions, they love to give gay people a free first-class ticket off of the top of buildings. They like to stone people in homosexual relationships to death. They like to slay the unbelievers and the kafir, the kafar, the kerfuffle, whatever you want to call them. They are intolerant, generally speaking, of the West, and yet we're supposed to be tolerant of them. I mean, Sadiq terrorist sympathising Khan seems to think that we should be accommodating for them, shall we say? Even though these people have been known to spout absolute vitriol. I think, what's his face? Anjem Chowdhury is a very big example of this, where he told jihadis to claim, and I quote, jihadi seekers allowance, in air quotes. Don't just take my word for it. You can easily look this up. You're grown up. And then, of course, we find out that this motherfucker is actually responsible for controlling one of the biggest terrorist groups known in Islam. Is it stroke number one? Al-Muhajirin, I believe it's called, or something like that. I mean, you can't blame me for having a stroke over these Islamic fucking names, let me tell you. And besides, I went the last video without having a stroke, so there's your first one. I don't know about you, but it sounds more like I'll have a large tub of margarine or something like that. Anyway, these people are just generally very intolerant of us, and yet we're expected to be tolerant of them. We're supposed to take the Muslim Council of Britain seriously when they want to go around conquering other countries and forcing a caliphate and or Sharia law onto those countries. I mean, we've already seen them take over Iran. We've already seen them take over Egypt. Oh no, it was Iran. Sorry, I am right. I'm doubting myself now. Fucking hell. And you should never doubt yourself, because then the lefties jump in and then all sorts of shit can kick off. But no, they've conquered Iran, they've conquered Egypt, they've now conquered Syria, and yet the mainstream media are trying to make out, here's the faces of resilience. Here are the people who are striving to make lives better for themselves. Yeah, good luck with that one. If I had a choice between death and serving under Islam, I think I'd rather choose death. At least death, you're gonna get a nice handshake from him, if nothing else. And if you're lucky, he might even buy you a drink. Though for me, I think I'll just have the tap water, thank you very much. Whereas Islam, I think they ban alcohol to some extent as well. So there's something that I didn't know about in the past. So, why is it that Islam sees a reason to basically go out of their way to attack anybody that criticises their prophet, who married Aisha, a 7-year-old girl? Well, it's because, as said, they are intolerant. It is because they believe their religion as a superior religion. They believe that their ideology is true and just, when it is about as true and just as a dishonest salesman. And what is it with them wanting to go after GB News and not other places? Well, actually, to be fair, that's not entirely true. They have attacked other channels before, but not to the extent that they have with GB News. What I find sad is that we have mainstream media who are trying to do everything they can to shaft particular groups of people who dare to criticize their religion, which, let me be clear, is not a special snowflake. Every religion is subject to discrimination, to scrutiny and criticism, as any other religion is. That's the thing. Islam does not get a free pass just because of their so-called prophet. That's the thing. Islam are a bunch of dickheads, bunch of barbaric, third world shithole death cult worshipping wankers who think themselves superior and holier than thou. But of course the mainstream media won't tell you this. You know the drill, folks, because say it with me, it doesn't suit the narrative. Do you think they're going to come out and say that Islam really is a third world shithole death cult like I do? Of course they're not. They're not going to tell us the truth, because they're a propaganda mouthpiece for the establishment. They are effectively the useful idiots to Islam. Just like Keir the traitor Starmer is a tool, literally and figuratively, that Islam uses to push their agenda forward. How tolerant do you think a Islamic country like, say, Baghdad or Afghanistan or whoever, how tolerant do you think they would be if we were basically told, if we told them, how about we build some Christian churches in your country? They would want our heads on spikes. But that's the thing with the mainstream media. That's the thing with Islam. They don't care about the truth. They only care about what they want us to believe. Do as we say rather than do as I do. They want us to see, speak, and hear no evil. It's as simple as that. Well, at least Patrick Christie's has got the balls, whether up here or down there, or in my case, both, to be able to speak out against issues like this. I only wish I had the opportunity to be on, say, Dan Wootton's Outspoken show, so I could further showcase how degenerate this religion of peace truly is. Now we come to, of course, another name who I never thought I'd be saying, who this maggot makes me want to throw up. This subhuman that abandoned us to go and be with a jihadi and basically be a spug trumpet for him. I am, of course, talking about Shamima Begum, the same woman who ended up having a child with one of these jihadists and was about to name him after an Islamic warlord, I believe. I can't remember the precise name off the top of my head, but I'm sure the most devout of Tommy Robinson's supporters will be able to educate me again on that much, because I do seem to have forgotten the name. But I do know that she had a child with them and tried to name him after a very horrible man indeed, a warlord of Islam. Well, apparently she may try to make a new bid to come back to the United Kingdom now that Al-Assad has been overthrown. To which I truly say, from the bottom of my heart, no, 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 and no. She made her fucking choice. She has no legal or human right to come back to this country. She is about as welcome in our country right now as a fart in a car, quite frankly. She wanted to abandon our country to go live in a third world shithole with a jihadist that sees the West as the enemy. I don't know about you, but if you willingly make that decision to go and serve jihadists, to go and basically serve the enemies of the state, then frankly, you are not welcome here anymore. If it were down to me, I would have a special little blacklist set up for maggots like this who do not deserve to come back to this country. And she would be right at the top of that list, probably right next to Keir the traitor Starmer, who is about as deserving of being in this country as I am of the title Mr. Fitness. But this is the thing. There will probably be some absolutely delusional lawyers or some Muslim lawyers who will willingly take up this case to try and get this terrorist sympathising scumbag back into our country. Oh, she says she's learned. No, I think she's saying what she wants us to hear rather than what she truly believes, because if she truly believed that, she never would have left the fucking country in the first place, quite frankly. She wouldn't have gone out of her way to have a child with one of these terrorists. So no, I do not believe for 1 second, Shamima Begum, that you've learned your lesson. I do not believe for 1 second that you are entitled to come back to this country. And I do not believe for 1 second that you should ever be allowed to return to our great nation. Unfortunately, it would be a lot greater if Keir the traitor Starmer wasn't running this country into the ground. But I digress. Now we come on to a case of the yawns. No, we come on to another issue regarding Tommy Robinson, because Tommy Robinson has now been harassed by the police again. While he's in jail, they are questioning him over a tweet that was sent on X. Now apparently, I think they are trying to add like 45 days onto his prison sentence because of this, for a tweet. Yet, the Daily Mail, or maybe I was right first time, reporter who decided to dox his family, dox his children, had to cancel Tommy Robinson's holiday because of that. That man who put out complete defamation and libelous slander, malicious lies about Tommy Robinson instigating the summer riots, he gets nothing. Last time I checked, isn't that against the law under Section 2 of the 2006 Fraud Act? Fraud by false representation? How do you think that would hold up in court? How do you think a fraud by false representation charge would hold up in court for this maggot who decided to put libelous slander about Tommy Robinson? Something tells me this reporter would be pleading guilty immediately, just to avoid a harsh sentence. But that's something, of course, the mainstream media won't dare tell you. This reporter from the Daily Fail needs to be held to account. They need to be named and shamed, they need to be dragged in front of the courts, and they need to be bare minimum fined a hefty amount and compensate Tommy Robinson, or he needs to be incarcerated. Because if they are willing to jail people for things they say on the internet, I think it's quite reasonable, quite frankly, that we start jailing this reporter for reporting falsehoods about other people. After all, you know the old saying, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Or is that not going to apply anymore because of the classic rules for thee, but not for me? I'll leave that for you to decide. But the bottom line as far as that story is concerned is Tommy Robinson did not instigate those riots. He did not incite violence in those riots. In fact, every single video that he put out regarding the Southport riots, he called for peace, to not attack the police, and to leave the violence out. But because it's Tommy Robinson, they think they get a free fucking pass to just twist narratives and to twist words and try to make Tommy Robinson look like the bad guy, even though the real people who were instigating those riots were people like Nick Knowles, who basically said that there were Muslims being attacked with acid. And I'm getting attacked with a fucking stick. It's stuck in my shoe, goddammit. Piss off. Anyway, he lied about Muslims being attacked with acid. He lied about this. And this incited racial tensions. I accept you can't be racist against a religion. I've said that many times. But what it does do is Islamic people who see that are going to think, oh, well, the white people are against us. Let's go and bash their heads in. They're going to think, well, we're being oppressed again. Let's take the fight to the supposed far right that are just a myth that the mainstream media and the government concoct like a witch's brew. Only this one isn't half as tasty. But he did this. Nick Knowles incited potential violence. Why has he not been arrested? Again, two-tier policing, two-tier justice, and it showcases a rules for thee but not for me system. This is the thing. They wonder why we lose respect for the mainstream media, the police, and the criminal prosecutions, or Crown Prosecution Service, rather. Or again, maybe I was right first time. Maybe it is the Criminal Protection Service. I mean, they're willing to let killers and rapists and nonces go away without a jail sentence. And recently, there was somebody who was caught on a plane with 21 kilograms of cocaine, I believe, or drugs. He was a drug dealer, basically. Another person who is the usual suspect, if you catch my meaning, caught with drugs, spared jail. I'd like to say I'm surprised, but that would be a blatant lie, because there isn't really much anymore that shocks me. But it does piss me off to no end, as I suspect it would piss off a whole bunch more people. Why is it our police are so incapable of arresting the real criminals who are committing the real crimes, but they're more than willing, they'll get half the fucking force out to go out and police Twitter or Facebook? It makes no sense. But when you have a director of police like Mark Rowley, why bother with common sense? Why bother with actual criminals? When the man above Mark Rowley is none other than Sadiq terrorist sympathising Khan, can we really be surprised that they're doing fuck all about the real criminals? And that's the thing. I'm always going to mention it like this because you can say it with me. I'm not going to sugarcoat a motherfucking thing. I am not going to mince my words. I'm going to say it exactly how it is, and I will do my best not to bullshit you. But the way I slice it, clearly our Criminal Protection Service, Crown Prosecution Service, is more interested in jailing people who record the Southport riots or put posts on the internet for years at a time. They'd rather jail them for 2 or 3 years for posting a post which says we should be blowing up the Bell End churches. I mean, I accept that is kind of tantamount to inciting terrorism. Or what about the people who merely record the aftermath of the riots, getting a couple of years in prison, or getting 9 months in prison for doing that? But you could kill someone and you won't even face jail. There is no person on this planet that will be able to defend that kind of action and be able to do it without losing the argument. I think what people need to understand is that we're not asking for the world. And I'm sure Bond will come along and say the world's not enough. Anyway, we're not asking for the world here. We're asking for the police to do their fucking job. We're asking for them to focus on policing the real crime, not the thought crimes of someone perceived to have taken offence, which has about as much credibility as I have the chance of going to a moon in the rocket. We don't want the police focusing on what Brenda said on Twitter or what Bob said on Facebook. We want them to deal with the murderers, the rapists, and all the serious criminals. And we want the Crown Prosecution Service to stop being a criminal protection service and actually sentence these motherfuckers to actual jail time. At least America, yeah, there may be a lot of things wrong with that shit, but at least when you murder someone, you get life, and life means life. Whereas here, you can be told you will be serving life in prison, but you might be eligible for parole in 10 years or something like that, or 15 years, or 20 years, or insert year here, basically. It doesn't make any sense that we allow these kinds of serious criminals to basically go out of their way to commit these horrendous acts, and for the Crown Prosecution Service, aka the Criminal Protection Service, to then say, no, you know what, we don't have any room in the jails. Oh, what's that? Brenda said something on Facebook. Quick, let's get a cell open for her. It's completely disgusting. Completely and utterly disgusting. Now, there is one final thing I want to talk about, and that is regarding reform with Nigel Farage, because Tommy Robinson has decided to forgive Nigel Farage again for the shit that he said about us and him, how he called us all far-right thugs, and how Richard Tice referred to us as that lot. Tommy may not hold a grudge against Nigel Farage. And you know what? That makes him a much better man than I. And I'm not afraid to admit that. But here's the thing. I'm usually quite reasonable as well. If you do me wrong once, and you say you're sorry and you won't do it again, I'm generally the sort of person who will wipe the slate clean. However, if there is a time like this where people are repeatedly slandering you, taking the piss out of you, and basically associating you with that akin of a disease, once, alright. Twice, you're pushing your luck. 3 times. Is there a message here? That's the way I slice it. And the way I look at it, they've already done this shit twice. So I am very hard pressed right now to forgive Richard Tice and Witless Widdicombe, Nigel the Phony Farage. I am very, very hard pressed to find it in me to forgive them, quite frankly. And I think a lot of people would want to take my side on this as well. And I'm not saying that to influence anyone, because obviously you have free will and you have the right to choose. But what I am saying is that I have standards that maybe they're quite high, or maybe they're quite low, I don't know. But I don't like people who constantly attack us when we have tried to offer our hand for peace. And what they do is they bite the hand, bite the hand that feeds them. Don't worry, with these mittens I should be fine. Anyway, they will constantly bite the hand that feeds them, and that's what they have been doing over these last few years, as far as Tommy Robinson's concerned. Therefore, it stands to reason why I am very critical right now of Nigel Farage and Reform. It's why I've said that I think our best bet is with UKIP, because Nick Tennacone has the balls, again, whether up here or down there, or in my case both, to actually side with that lot. He understands. He gets it. We are not this horrible boogeyman that should not be mentioned. We are not these horrible creatures that want to believe in white supremacy and all that shit. We're ordinary people. We're ordinary patriots, and we want our country back. That's the only thing that we are. We don't want Islam taking over our country. We don't want this country to become a third world shithole like the Middle East. We want our country to represent the best of Britain. And right now, I don't think that Farage and Reform fit the best of Britain. I think they're a bunch of showmen and showwomen who are in it for titles and fame and money and power. I don't see them as people who care. I do accept that Nigel Farage says a lot of the right things, says a lot of the right stuff, and says things that we can all agree with. However, he was fundamentally against mass deportations. He does not think that Islam is a problem, when it is very clear as crystal in fact, that Islam is a fundamental problem because their third world shithole ideology wants to conquer our country, which last time I checked, this country is supposed to be built on Judeo-Christian heritage, and that it was built with millennia of blood, sweat and tears from the British people. We do not need charlatans and hooligans and shenanigans from the Reform Party. We need people who are going to make a real difference. We need people who understand what the problems are and how to fix them. Because right now, what we have in power in the houses of treachery, I mean Parliament, or yet again, maybe I was right first time, is a traitor who is more interested in being a sectarianist bastard for Islam, willing to fast track them into hotels and to being a part of our country where they can basically spew their hatred and their vitriol in their mosques trying to turn our country into a third world shithole. We have a man who is about as interested in our country and our native British people as I am in watching paint dry. We have a man who is as welcome in this country as a nonce in a nursery, who frankly has all the appeal of a dead skunk. It really does beg the question why my petition was removed from Change, that I have still tried to appeal and they have still not responded. Really does beg the question. Maybe it's the wording. Maybe it's the fact I called him a traitor at the start. Maybe it's the fact that I said that it is because he has broken these laws and that laws. He is in breach of Article 3 of the Human Rights Act, which is torture. He's also in breach of Article 8 of the Human Rights Act, because there are journalists that are willing to harass him while he's on holiday, and he has the right to a family, peaceful life. They were also breaching it when they weren't allowing him the dignity to be able to spend half an hour each day, or is it an hour? I can't remember. But that amount of time each day being able to go out of his cell to enjoy some fresh air. And what about Article 10 of the Human Rights Act? How he ordered his police, to arrest Peter Lynch, God rest his soul, and arrest him for the horrendous crime of shouting at police, saying that they were protecting the people who were killing and raping our children. Need I say more? The bottom line is that that petition that I put up, that they have cited for being misleading and unsubstantiated, is actually very substantiated and not misleading at all. He has funded war in Ukraine, where our government has sent to the tune of 2.5 million at least this year to Ukraine. They have sent 11 million. Keir the traitor Starmer himself has sent 11 million pounds off to Syria, which is now being governed by terrorists. Basically, they are funding terrorism. That is not unsubstantiated. That is fact. Because as said before, Islam, the Mohammedans, are waging war with the West every single day since the passage and the beginning of time. But again, the mainstream media do not want to tell you that. But I'm supposed to be the one who's putting up unsubstantiated claims. I'll leave that to you lot to decide. But unlike the mainstream media and Keir the traitor Starmer and Sadiq terrorist sympathising Khan and Nigel the phony Farage, I want to make a difference in this country. And I will do everything I can to do so. Because as I've said before, in order to achieve change, it's like what Tommy Robinson said before. We have to be prepared to do one of two things: get killed or go to jail. Because at this point, we are past the point, I think, of peaceful resolution. I don't want it to be, but I think that is the cold, bitter truth at this point. I think we are now entering the stages where a violent revolution is now inevitable. In the next, I'd say 3 months, we're going to see it all kick off. I don't want it. I don't condone it. I don't advocate for it. I won't justify it. Because I don't want a violent revolution. But I accept now that we are at the stage where preventing it may be impossible. Because Keir the traitor Starmer has got us at the edge of that cliff. And as I've said before, even a cornered rat will show its fangs when cornered. We have a choice to make. We have to stand up and fight the establishment, or we sit around and do nothing, apathy, and we watch our great nation die. I don't know about you, but I've still got fight left in me. I may not exactly be one of those men in the military who's got a body as buff as David Hasselhoff and fucking has the ability to go to war with the best of them. But what I am is determined. I have a commitment. I will never betray this country like Keir the traitor Starmer has. Never. The only thing I might lie about is whether or not I'm going to my friend's house and then I'm actually going to McDonald's. But that's old news, basically. That was what I used to do with my mum. I was like, I'm just going around with friends, and then I'd sneakily bugger off to McDonald's and get myself a Big Mac and large fries and all that shit. But hey-ho, that was when I was in my teenage years. But in all seriousness, if I was called to defend my country against an invading army that was invading our shores, I would defend my country 100%. If I was told by my government I need to go over to Ukraine and help them win the war, I'd stick a middle finger up at the government and tell them to fuck off, bluntly speaking, because there is no way I am serving this treacherous establishment. There is no way I am going to be forced into a war that I do not want to be a part of. In fact, the only war I'd be interested in fighting in is perhaps against the government, as I have been doing over the last 6 years with my YouTube channels. When I lost that first YouTube channel, it was devastating for me because I bust my balls for that shit, and I ended up getting into was I a partner on YouTube? I might have been, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I do know that I was starting to make a little bank out of that. And my sister took that away. Well, this time, as I've said before, this is my resurgence. This is my chance to make a difference in this world. And I think it's time that we, the British people, took out the trash and place it in the dustbin of history. Because quite frankly, Keir the traitor Starmer has no purpose serving in power anymore. Nor does Sadiq terrorist sympathising Khan. And I will always stand by the people who actually want to report the truth. If people want to report the truth, then we need to stand behind them, no matter how big or how small they are. Because I know there's a little bit of infighting going on right now as far as Maya Tuzi is concerned, and Paz 49 and Clown World. Well, this is my closing message. This infighting, this bitching and moaning at each other has to stop. It's got to stop right now. If you want to rip each other's throats out, do it after we've taken back our country. Because right now, Great Britannia needs us. And I can't think of a worse way to waste that time than to go at each other's throats when we all know who the real enemy truly is.